He told me that not even the blind see black. I sank the baskets into the deep fryer inside. It was nearly over. Another 10-hour shift, just about in the books. I looked at my arms. After 5 years in the fast food, they were thoroughly pocked with grease scars. Weren't scars supposed to have interesting stories? I guess they seldom ever do. However, deep fryer scars are a special kind of uninteresting. Nights like these always got me too existential for my own good. Nights like these always made me ponder the point of it all. A few bits of grease jumped to stain my blue apron. Excuse me. Someone was at the counter, but I still stared straight ahead into space. The roar of the fryer seemed to grow as I further contemplated the point of my existence, the same way I typically do when it's a Friday night and I'm closing at Culver's. Excuse me. I shook myself from my trance and walked to the counter. Hi, can I help you? The man at the counter wore a plain purple shirt with grease stains where his belly ballooned the fabric tight. Yeah, I ordered a butter burger. Yes, sir. Is that not what you got? No. Butter burgers are supposed to be made with butter. I get them without cheese because I can taste the buttery cream that way. There was no butter. It was made the same as all the others. Fresh butter on top, I'm sure of it. You're not hearing me. I love cheese. I get the burger without it so I can taste the cream. There was no cream, I'd fucking know. Okay, I scratched my forehead. I understand. Where's the burger? What do you mean? I ate it. But it wasn't to your liking. Didn't your dad teach you not to talk back? You're not a pretty enough girl to work anywhere else, so take this to heart. When you get customers' orders wrong, do you know what you do? You apologize and make it right. Every time I see you in here, I figure my order will be fucked up. I didn't recognize this man, which years ago I would have found strange. But now the past always felt foggy. Some mixture of depression and apathy had long turned my memory to mush. Some nickname was coming back to me though. My coworkers had called some obnoxious customer Big Barney. So, are you going to do that? He pointed past me to the grill. Make it right? I was managing that night. I could have kicked him out. I could have told him to shove it. But I'd worked in customer service long enough to know the difference between those who were looking for free food and those who were looking for a fight. Big Barney was looking for both. If I fired back, out his phone would come. Then he'd play the victim and start some indignant rant about food service workers and women as he filmed my face. I couldn't do that now. I just wanted to go home. Coming right up, I said. When the burger was done and on the bun, I fattened a flat spatula with as much butter as it could hold and slapped it on the patty. Big Barney was nodding and licking his lips as he watched from the counter. Here you go. He took the bag and started towards his booth. As if he read my thoughts from earlier, he turned and spoke like he'd just made a discovery. You know, he wiggled his finger at me. You should kill yourself. I stared at the burger greased bag. He held it in both sets of fingers, his arms tucked like a T-Rex above his big belly. You're well on your way, I said quietly. What? I said have a good day. He grunted and sat, and I went back to the fryer, filled with a determincy to live longer and kinder than Big Barney. That night was memorable on two fronts. It was also then that I first noticed the man. I was walking to my car while he was waiting at the bus stop. He watched his feet as he playfully kicked something on the sidewalk. When I got closer, I saw that he was wearing a bowler hat and long wool slacks. But he didn't look like one of those LARPers with a body odor problem. He was tan, sinewy and strong. In the street light, I could see his veins roping up his arms like vines. He suddenly looked up at me in alarm, as if he didn't expect to see anyone out. I wheeled around thinking his attention must be focused on something behind me, but there was nothing out of the ordinary. He kept staring at me as I got to my car. My key fob was long dead, and I kept my eyes on the man and scratched the door as I tried to fit my key in the lock blind. Something just felt off. The way his head snapped up to attention. It was like he recognized me. I started driving home in the opposite direction. I didn't want him to have the slightest idea where I lived. But 5 minutes later, when I turned onto the dark side streets, I slowly hit the brakes. There, a mile away from the bus stop, was Bowler Hat Man. He was walking down the sidewalk the same direction I was driving, his hands in his pockets, his arms swaying with each long stride. He couldn't have gotten there that fast, even if he'd sprinted. I took an abrupt left before he could turn to see me and drove faster. It was too long of a shift, and I was too tired to fret on something so strange. This supernatural man could murder me in my sleep for all I cared. I was going home, and I was going to bed. I was living with my parents, but ever since I became independent, they spent their summers traveling to the country in a van while I looked after their little two-story. I parked in the driveway in the back, but when I was halfway to the house, I paused. The back door was slightly ajar. My memory may be shit, but I was methodical when it came to locking doors. Then again, could I have left it open? I tried to remember locking it, but of course I couldn't. It was like asking whether I put on my left or right shoe first before leaving for work. It was a small house to search, and it was blessedly empty. Still, I couldn't sleep. I spent the whole night awake watching TV. At some point, my vision became hazy, like there was a black smoke just in front of my eyes. I waved it away and settled back into my seat. A week passed, and I forgot about the bowler hat man entirely. The days kept blending into a smog of waking, going to work, and trying to find time after chores to feel like I had some sort of life. I wanted out. I wanted out of life itself. On one of those days, instead of going straight home after work, I stopped at a sporting goods store. I bought a little rifle, a .22 LR. It would be quiet, and more importantly, it would be clean. It would leave just a little hole in my head. The round wasn't powerful enough to break through my skull, so it would dance around the inside of my head instead. Perfect. My dad kept a few hunting rifles around, but I couldn't use his guns. I wasn't going to make anyone more guilty than they already feel. Now all I needed was the inspiration to pull the trigger. About 3 weeks after I bought the gun, I was scrolling through my phone when a headline made me stop. Male Karen chokes to death on chimichanga while berating waitstaff. I frowned and played the video. There was Big Barney, sitting in a booth alone. He was wearing the same goddamn shirt. His arms were jiggling wildly as he screamed. "All you can eat means all you can eat," he screamed. "Sir, that standard applies to one meal only." "What does this look like?" "This is not your first meal. You came in 4 hours ago and we need the—" "Fuck you, it's not. This is one meal," he said as if it were Sparta and started ferociously shoving the deep-fried burrito in his mouth. He chomped crazily like an animal. His eyes were vicious, but suddenly they became filled with terror as he grabbed his swollen throat. "Oh my god, he's choking!" The audio became a great clamor of voices, and the view of the camera was blocked by Good Samaritans racing to perform the Heimlich. In the comments, there was a link to the news article. I read that he died after a failed tracheotomy. That was it. He was dead. Huh, I said to myself. Do you ever feel like the universe has given you the go-ahead? Like it shot you a wink in the form of a coincidence? Well, I wondered, who did I have to outlive now? The next day at work, I felt a kind of relief. Relief that I was exiting this world any day now. I knew that I should feel fear. I thought about all the countless times I was terrified I was going to die. Severe turbulence, nights after scary movies as a kid, the time the thick cheese of a deep dish pizza snaked into my trachea on its descent to my stomach. Now death was here, and I was his harbinger. And wouldn't you know it, I didn't feel a thing. But then it happened again. My vision seemed obscured. As I stared at the fryer, I waved my hand in front of my face. I swear something like ink was leaking from my eyes. When I got home, the door was ajar again. I was surprised to feel a slight twang of fear. But I shrugged, figuring I left it unlocked. It just went to show how far I'd fallen from the ways of who I used to be. I poured a drink. Tonight, I thought, and curled up on the couch. Tonight was the night. I don't know how many drinks I had, but at some point I woke in the dark. I thought I'd left the lights on and looked into the kitchen. When I saw that the oven clock was dead, I realized the power must be out. Just then I froze. There were footsteps upstairs. They were slow, careful, searching. They were just above me. My new gun was in my first-level bedroom. I stood from the couch slightly drunk and tiptoed with my heart in my throat. I loaded a cartridge and leaned in the doorframe, barrel pointed toward the stairs. The steps creaked more as whoever it was moved from my parents' carpeted bedroom and into the barewood hall. There were 3 stairs before the staircase turned at the landing and descended the rest of the way to the living room. Thump, they stepped down the first stair. Thump, I steadied my breathing. I made sure the safety was off. Thump, the footsteps paused, and I held my breath. Suddenly I saw a figure come into view. It was dark, but the memory of the man raced back. In the black, I could see the shape of a bowler hat. He slowly turned his head and looked straight at me. "Stop!" I yelled. "Stop or I'll shoot!" He suddenly threw himself down the stairs. The sound of his steps thundered now. "Stop!" He was coming right towards me. "Stop!" I closed my eyes and I pulled the trigger. I kept them closed, the gun trembling in my hands now. When there was a great thud on the floor, I opened them. The man with the bowler hat lay just in front of me, sprawled across the floor. Oh my God. I took a few steps to my right and threw open the blinds. There was enough light from the moon and the streetlights to see. I lowered the gun, and just as I did, the man sprung up from the floor. "No," I whispered in shock. He walked to me and set his hands firmly on my shoulders. I was too afraid to do anything. I just let the gun slip from my fingers and fall to the floor. He bent his head so it was level with mine and looked searchingly into my eyes. All I could do was stare back. Above his eyes, on his forehead, was a little red hole. A bullet hole, I realized. "It's gone," he said in a thick German accent, and sighed in relief as he took his hands from my shoulders. What? I stuttered. "I'm sorry for the scare, girl, but it's the best way to do this." I said nothing. Where are my manners? He wiped his palms on his pants and extended his hands. My name is Klaus. I didn't move my hand to shake his. No matter. I understand. I'm still an intruder. But the black smoke that swirled from your eyes, young lady, it was as bad as I've ever seen it. Who are you? I'm Klaus, he smiled, confused. No, I mean, what do you want? I wanted to get rid of that monster infecting your brain. It scares even a ghost like me. It's easy to spot up close, but that night when I first saw you, I had never seen the smoke from so far. What smoke? Those horrifying thoughts that fester in your head. They're put there by a beast and they belch a smoke. I was given a gift. A gift to see that evil when it pours from people's eyes. I shot you, I said, remembering as I looked at the hole in his head. He sighed. I'm afraid not. He took off his hat and held it in both hands. When our farm failed, I wandered to the old well at the property line. I sat on the edge, put a pistol to my head, and that was supposed to be that. I knew I'd succeeded in dying, but there was something in the earth, something in the well that kept my spirit alive. I still don't know if it's good or evil, but I've learned to use it for good. I've gotten rid of a lot of monsters I've seen behind people's eyes. In fact, I must be going soon. But I'll tell you what I know. Sometimes we have to fear for it before it realizes how badly we want our life. And I know what the alternative is. I know death. It's nothing. That sounds like bliss to you, doesn't it? But such a word is incomprehensible to the living. You think of death as darkness and nothingness as the same. But even darkness is entirely something. Klaus looked into my eyes. And not even the blind see black. He stepped around me and stared out the window. Whatever water my body fell into was cursed. I exist, yet I feel nothing. I know when something should make me happy or sad or laugh, but I don't feel it. And I miss everything. I miss the wind against my skin. I miss love and wonder and boredom. I even miss the sadness that drove me to put that bullet in my head. Anything, he shook his head. I wish I could feel anything, but nothing at all. The fright I gave you is interesting, isn't it? You think you'd give anything to die without having to do the deed yourself. But when the opportunity presents itself, you realize the truth. Deep down, you don't want to die, do you? I felt like I could cry then. Great hiccuping sobs of release. The cries that my sadness had stolen from me and replaced with indifference. And while depression was far from defeated, I knew the most important part of getting through it. I knew I wanted to live. He started walking towards the door. I understand you're alone. I understand the anxiety you feel when you wake up knowing you must somehow forward another day. And I know. Klaus put his hat back on and adjusted the brim. I know that at the end of each and every day, you are oh so tired. But child, you must try to comprehend. He rubbed the hole in his head mournfully. You are oh so alive.